Yeah, just be like, hey, we're free,
And
and then
yeah, thanks for doing the agenda. Damn, I'm so busy these days. I'm really looking forward for my holidays.
holidays. What is that?
So we're live. And
Oh.
yeah, thanks for doing the agenda. Yeah, so welcome everybody to this FRIBIS event. We are very glad to have you here, and we are very thrilled to present our team. The team is called NetFi. This stands for Network Analysis and Financial Diaries, and it's a very interesting team because we basically deal not only with UBI, which is the main focus of FRIBIS, the Freiburger Institute for Basic Income Studies, but we also deal with community currencies. And for this, we look at how community currencies can support UBI systems, and also how a UBI system can support community currencies. And we have Julio Linares here from the Circles team, and we have Teodoro Crescione here from the university in, or maybe you just introduce yourself, guys, shortly.
Central European University, yeah. Yeah, like I'm a PhD student in network science at Central European University.
And yeah, I'm Julio Neres. I'm the co-president of the Circles Cooperative here in Berlin. And I'm also serving as social outreach for the Basic Income Earth Network. And I have a master's degree in the anthropology department from the London School of Economics.
Yes, and we are the core of the FRIBIS team. We actually, of the FRIBIS NetFi team, we actually have 3 other people. They are very busy with their work, so yeah, we push it mainly. And yes, today we want to introduce you to the network analysis of the data of CirclesUBI. Julio will tell something about Circles in a minute after my introduction. And we want to introduce you, yeah, very briefly in what we plan to do for the next years, because the last year as a FRIBIS small team was like, from my perspective, and I think you would agree, very successful. We've been very busy, and we actually reached more than we were expecting us to reach. So yeah, congratulations. It's such an honor and such a pleasure to work with you guys. Especially in this like digital realm. Yes, always a pleasure. And yeah, I think this is it. So we have 45 minutes. This is my short introduction to the team. You will hear more about Circles from Julio. Then Teodoro will come to the meat of this presentation because he's our network expert, and he will yeah, get his hands dirty in code and data, and tell you about the results. And yeah, then we will have a brief discussion about what we plan to do. And then you, like our visitors, have some minutes, some opportunities to ask questions to us. And yeah, we are very delighted to be here. And thank you all guys for watching. Julio?
Thank you so much, Valentine, for the introduction. And yes, so we're very excited here to share some of the preliminary, very early results from the Circles network data. So just a bit for context, I would like to talk about the Circle system and how it works, what it is, and what it's meant to do. And then talk a little bit about, very quickly, about the difference between open experiments and closed experiments, and data related to blockchain. So very briefly, Circles is a basic income system. What that means is that it is a system whereby everybody within the Circles network is constantly issuing an unconditional amount of money every day, all the time. So right now the parameters are set to be 240 circles a month, plus 50 circles upon onboardment. So to enter the system, you need 3 people to trust you, 3 trust connections, as we call it technically, within the web of trust. And once you do that, then you basically receive this amount of money. Now, it's important to say that Circles is a system of distribution. So it's a system for the distribution of money. And that's basically it. It can be adapted to any social setting, any local setting. Parameters can be shifted if the protocol layer where all of these things are written are changed. That is also possible to do. So for now, the first version of the Circles protocol is set to these parameters. We also have an inflation rate of 7% a year, so that every year over time, the amount of money that people issue is constantly growing. So we created a mechanism for monetary creation, and then we're also now working towards creating mechanisms for monetary destruction, so like taxation or ways by which you can take money out of circulation. Now, at a social level, we launched the protocol in last October, and since then we received a lot of very interesting attention from many parts of the world. When we launched, up until today, we've had about 100,000 people joining the network, successfully making accounts, which is very interesting, and it's really distributed from all over the world. So I would like to now go into a bit about the differences between what systems like Circles are doing versus what you would normally see as a research pilot, which pertains to this notion of an open versus a closed experiment. So a closed experiment is usually set within the parameters of a laboratory, where you have control variables, you have parameters that you can measure from point A into point B. You basically know, in the context of a basic income, when the pilot project will end. You know how many people you're going to give it to. You have a control group that you can compare and run statistics on to see how are the different people's experiences shifting with the basic income. And you can also do all sorts of things like randomized control trials and so on and so forth. So the benefits of closed experiments are that you can basically compare and contrast different people based on the fixed parameters, right? Whereas with an open experiment, you're dealing with basically an open space. It's dealing with the reality of life. So it's less, of course, control. There's more complexity to it, and therefore the basis towards creating a pilot and measuring different elements of it is very different. Now, on the blockchain layer, it's important to say that blockchains as a technology, so the Circles protocol lives on the blockchain. Today, it's called the X-type blockchain, which is a sidechain of the Ethereum ecosystem. The blockchain data that we get is half anonymous and half public. So all the transactions that are recorded in the network, so people sending money to other people, are public, but we do not know who is who. So the anonymous layer lies on that every person in the network has yeah, we only could know who they are if we could match their account, their public account, to their personal account within the network. So in terms of data, we also have the ability to check the trust network. So whenever somebody creates a trust connection, we can see that structure of trust emerging from within the network, and that's also what creates the pathways for the money to flow. So there is a relationship between the structure of trust and the structure of money, which Theodora will be talking about today. So yeah, so just in general, in terms of epistemology, it's important to note that whilst Circles is meant to be a basic income system for distribution, it only works insofar as there is enough people and resources in the network so that others can claim a basic income for it. So as I said, this is open. It's open technologies. It's free software for anybody who wants to use it. Anybody from a local government to a collective, a cooperative, and so on, to make the stuff of the basic income a reality. So I'll leave it at that. And Teodoro, you can take it from there.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm really grateful to this team, and I'm happy to work with you guys, and I'm really grateful to work with in FRIBIS. So I will just jump then on the technical details. Can you see my screen? Everything is fine? Yeah, okay. From a network science point of view, the CirclesUBI network is really interesting because, as Julio said, we can observe the transaction network, so where all the economic exchanges are taking place, and the social network, so the web of trust, the social network between all the users. So the first network I analyzed is the transaction network. You can see here a picture of it. And the transaction network I analyzed goes from October 2020 to April 2021. We observed almost 5,000 active users who did 16,000 transactions for a total value of 508,000 circles. It takes a bit of time to switch. Okay, so the first analytical tools I used is called flow analysis, and I analyzed the so-called cumulative monthly net flow. That is basically the monthly balance. So it's just the difference between inflow and outflow over time. And what we can conclude from what I conclude from this flow analysis. So first of all, I saw that there is the average value of transaction is increasing over time, and also the number of users with positive and negative balances is converging over time. So just to clarify, the monthly balance here exclude the universal basic income. So it's just I'm just analyzing the flow of trades between users in this transaction network. The second finding of this flow analysis is maybe the most interesting ones. And the most interesting one is about this kind of polarization. So actually we observed a very high inequality in the economic system, and we analyzed I analyzed the richest 10% and the poorest 10%. And what we observed that this polarization is actually based on very different behavior in the economic network. In fact, the richest ones are those ones who are mainly accepting circles as a payment system, but they are not spending circles in the same sides. And the opposite thing is for the poorest ones. So they are mainly spending circles, but they are not accepting circles on the same sides. And this can be already some signature of emergent inequality. So there are permanent receivers and permanent payers. The second set of analytical tools I developed is called the swap analysis, where a swap is a marginal variation of the balance from negative to positive position of the net flow. So why this? Because I wanted to understand the level of commitment that user have towards this payment system. So I wanted to understand how much people are willing to accept circles, both to accept circles and to pay with circles. And because what we don't want to observe, what we wouldn't like to observe, is a persistent accumulation of circles, or just a persistent spending of circles. What we want to observe is this kind of dynamic, this kind of oscillation over time of people that are able to accept and spend. So this is an indication of an indicator for of how circles is perceived, because if it is perceived as a means of exchange, it means that we should observe this kind of temporal pattern. From this analysis, from this swap analysis, I concluded that almost 20% of active users are actually swapping, and the average time to swap is 11 days. This is a very good sign. It means that who is committed to use circles as a means of payment, a regular means of payment, because a swap every 11 days is a very good, in average, is a very good indicator. But the 20% is still maybe is still a small number, and this can be one of the explanation of this emerging inequality you observed in the flow analysis. The third part of my analysis is related to the cyclic structures in the economic network. So now I will spend a couple of slides trying to explain this from a theoretical point of view, why it's important to analyze the cyclic structures in the economic network. So let's look at this image on the left. You see this cloud of users connected by blue lines. This is called, in graph theory, is called a strongly connected component. In a strongly connected component, every user can reach any other user in the strongly connected component. And this has two implications, topological implication, topological and economic implication, which are very interesting. In a strongly connected component, everyone is both giving and accepting. So you see that there is at least one arrow point out and one out pointing inward, outward and inward. In every user in this cloud. You are talking just about the cloud. The second implication of a strongly connected component is that everyone is involved in cyclic structures. So for example, if we take the orange guy in the left bottom, you see that for example, he's sending money to Donna, then Donna is sending money to the nurse, and then the nurse is sending money back to the orange guy. And this is a cyclic structure of length free. But it's not the only cyclic structure. You can see also that the orange guy can send money to Donna, and then Donna can send money to the policeman, and then the policeman can send money to the DJ, and then the DJ can send money to the teacher, and then the teacher again send money back to the orange guy. This is a cyclic structure of length 5. This is really important to understand because there are some studies, still very few studies though, but very few on the income and price effect of the network topology. How the network topology can affect the income and the price in the economic network. For example, we know that the higher is the degree and the between centralities of one individual, the higher is his income or income, and this is also the average path length is associated with an increase of cost. In very simple words, it means that the more the topology of the economic network gives the opportunity to broker different sectors of the economic network, the higher is the probability to the higher is the probability for the user to put some markup on the prices, so increasing the cost of exchange, economic exchange. But this has also some effect on the distribution of liquidity. For example, let's add to this image Alice and Bob. Alice and Bob, as you can see, are these red guys on the left and on the right, and they are not involved in the strongly connected component. So Bob is just spending, so just sending money to Chris, and Alice is just receiving money to Donna. They are not reinvesting, let's say, liquidity or receiving liquidity from the strongly connected component. Alice is just receiving, Bob is just giving, and this in the long run has some implication in the distribution of liquidity. In fact, what we could observe is that Bob at a certain point will run out of money, and Alice will just keep accumulating most of the liquidity from the system. So what we could expect at a certain point is that in this payment system, there won't be enough liquidity in the long run to fulfill all the necessity of the all users. And this situation are called also gridlock or deadlock, according to this the kind of problem that the payment system is facing in this situation. So the ideal situation is to have everyone involved in this strongly connected component. Although from a game theoretical point of view, we still could face some issues because it depends on the cost of the link structures that the users are facing, and also on the far side of players, so how much players are aware of this topology. And in fact, we could either have a strongly connected component, but we could even have an empty network. So it's important to study the strongly connected component of economic networks. From a methodological point of view, there are very few studies at the moment, mainly related to Sardex network and also the obligation clearing network in Slovenia. Sorry for this noise on the background. So the first two papers I really loved and I found really inspiring are the Sardex network, the cyclic motives in Sardex network, where they are analyzing these directed cyclic motives, and they have found that users involved in the cyclic motives have a better performance, and the whole network has a better performance the more cyclic structures you can observe in the network. And the second paper is this liquidity saving through obligation clearing and mutual credit. And in this paper, Thomas Fleischmann developed his own methodology. So he's removing cyclic structures. He's just analyzing what is left. So all the people who are out of the cyclic structures. And in this way, he's analyzing this net internal debt of the system and how this net internal debt of the system is related with the performance of the whole economic network. But I will just now explain the methodology I adopted, because it's a bit different from what was done in these two papers. And I will just try to describe this in very simple words. So the first step of this analysis was to isolate the largest strongly connected component of Circles economic network. So I took the largest strongly connected component. So, and then the second step is to detect the maximum weight spanning tree of this largest strongly connected component. What means? It means that I'm just considering the subset of those edges which have the maximum weight. So I want to understand where the maximum flow is going. But in the spanning tree, I'm just taking those edges that are not creating any cycle inside. Then in the third step, I will add one edge per node that is maximizing the outflow. In this way, I'm creating some cycles inside the tree. And the final graph is one of the subgraphs with the largest possible flow in the largest strongly connected component of the economic network. Why I'm doing this? I'm doing this because I want to analyze the core of this economic network. So what's going on in the core of the Circles economic network? And in particular, I'm interested in the core of the cyclic structures in the economic network. So what the fourth step is about detecting the simple cycles, which are called also maximum strongly fundamental cycles, which are components of the cycle basis of the cycle space of the largest strongly connected component. And in this way, I'm analyzing the core of the cyclic structure of the Circles economic network. For computational reason, I am analyzed only simple cycles of length 2, 3, 4, and 5. But the main difference with respect to also previous work is that I'm interested also in the temporal sequence of these cycles. So there is a difference between the simple cycles I can detect, so just the directed simple cycle I can detect, and the time respect and directed simple cycles. So for example, if you see here cycles of length 5, simple cycles are 26, but if I'm looking at the time respecting simple cycles, they are only 7. And after this, I analyze the temporal instances. So temporal instance of a cycle are are all those period of in time in which this cycle is repeating, is taking place. So for example, let's imagine that I'm sending money to Julio. Julio is sending money to Valentine, and Valentine is sending money to me. This is a cycle of length 3. What I'm interested in is to analyze every time this cycle between the 3 of us is time respecting. So it must be me sending money to Julio, and then after Julio send money to Valentine, and then after Valentine send money to me. Otherwise, if it's not time respecting, it's not really a proper cycle. It's a cycle, but it's not time respecting cycle. The temporal instance means how many times this cyclic flow is repeating. And for example, here you can see that time respecting simple cycle of length 3 are 24, but the temporal instance are 30. So it means that there are a few cycles that repeated over time. And this is good because it means that some of these cycles are repeating over time. So after this, I did some statistical analysis about this cyclic flow. In particular, I was interested in the activity of these cycles. For example, I found that cycles of length 4 have the highest activity in the network. I was interested also in the duration, so how long it takes for a cycle to start and end. And then I was interested also in the multipliers. So this is, I think, is very interesting from economic perspective. So how much these cycles are contributing to the multiplier, where the multiplier is based on the inflow and the outflow of the whole cyclic structure. And what I found in the Circles economic network is that cycles of length 3 and 2 are the one with highest multiplier. And finally, I try to create this flow cycle centrality, which is, I think, a relevant metric to detect hubs in the economic network and eventually intervene in the system, because you can detect basically the most important player in this economic network and which are playing an important role in maintaining these cyclic structures in the network. And in very simple words, the flow cycle centrality is measuring both in how many cycles the user is participating and how much is involved in these cycles. So how much is investing, how much is participating in these cycles. I will just jump on the final part of my analysis. In this section, I isolated the web of trust, which is related to the largest strongly connected component we saw so far, we analyzed so far. And I found some interesting results significant results for swapping users. So as I said before, swapping users are those users that are very committed to this network. So they are using the network regularly, and they are facing positive and negative net flow balances over time. So they are really involved in regular trading relationships. And what we observed that social and economic centralities are positively correlated. So it means that the social network is very, very important for the functioning of the economic network. So if any kind of phenomenon we observe in the economic network could be related to the social network. So to the web of trust between users. The net flow and the non-swap time are positively correlated with social and economic centralities. What does it mean? It means that also those people who have this tendency to accumulate are also those ones who are more central, more important in the social and economic layers. So this is also important aspect to maybe that this worth to investigate more, because it may be it could be either a problem of social connection, but it could be even a problem of economic structures. So in the first 6 months of Circles, we observed an increased confidence of users towards the system, but on the other hand, as expected, is a very young economic network that in which need to be reinforced, and from an economic perspective, and also the social the connectedness in the social network could be improved, and eventually we could observe some advantage. So the final part of so the final part is about the next steps, and about the next steps, yeah, from a quantitative perspective, of course, the wealth distribution is to be improved, and I want to work on the analysis of regular payment, so temporal motives in technical terms, and I'm going to work on finding the appropriate new models in order to test the statistical significance of these results. And now I will leave the floor to Julio for final comments, observation, and he will talk also about the qualitative analysis we are planning to do.
Thank you so much, Teodoro, for this very nice and brief first overview of the whole Circles network. It's very exciting to see. In general, I would try to talk a little bit about this relationship between the trust network, so the structure of trust, and also the economic network. That's very interesting, especially if thought about in the context of local supply chains. So in the slides about the network of trust and the transaction network, it will be interesting to see in the future as more relationships become embedded within the network, more producers, more systems of distribution, more places for exchange, consumption, and so on start to emerge. It will be interesting to see how trust is related to these local supply chains, and how can trust play a role in actually localizing the supply chains. So I'm very curious about that, mainly because it provides a tool for people so that they can actually, I don't know, they actually see where their products come from, and they can actually trust the producer through other people that they trust, in comparison to today. So that's something that was lingering in my mind when you were presenting this. And then in terms of the inequality emerging, I'm really curious about this, especially to understand what is going on and where it is going on. So on the next steps on this survey, it's basically a small 10 to 12 questions questionnaire about what are people doing with their circles, where are they if they want to give us this information, and then also trying to tease out to these like richest and poorest people within the network what is going on, because as I said, within the blockchain data, we can only know so far both the transactions of trust, the structure, sorry, and the transaction network, but we don't know who these people are or if they're even people at all. So the trust network is a way of creating spaces where people can actually trust each other, but that doesn't mean that there could be a bot network somewhere that just creates accounts and then trusts each other to then accumulate tokens, for example. So the first thing we want to determine is whether or not these are real people, if we can, and then figure out what are they doing with their circles, and for what are they exchanging it for. So these are like secondary steps. And yeah, and try to like figure out geographically, right, where these transactions are happening, because it's very, very interesting to see, yeah, where will this go. Thank you so much again, Teodoro, for the analysis. Yeah, I was telling you yesterday I wanted to draw this analogy between this arborescence, this like structure of a tree within the network, to what we now call supply chains. So like the relationship between the leaf and the root, and the and the stems and everything that goes through them, to try to think also more ecologically about the nutrients and the energy and the resources that we as a society, as a human society, interacting also with other living creatures, need also to create more, mutualistic ways of organizing life. So thank you so much. And also thank you to Professor Janos Kertes from Central European University. He's been also helping us a lot with this study. Yeah, and yeah, if you want to know more about circles, please visit joincircles.net. You can read the white paper or the handbook at handbook.joincircles.net. And yeah, we welcome questions for the audience now.
Yes, thank you very much, Julio, and especially thank you very much, Teodoro, for this great presentation. I hope it was understandable, because we know that it's very technical, very quantitative, and also Teodoro is basically inventing new methods to actually analyze the network. So this is very innovative research that you heard about right now. And we have 10 minutes more for questions and for hopefully a rather vivid discussion with our audience. And we have a first question from Hans Florian Heuer. We are in like a loose contact over the Community Currency Alliance, which I can highly recommend if you are interested in community currencies and discussions about it. All related topics, economics, philosophical, and also like very practical. Teodoro, the question is directed to you. Can you read it in the Zoom chat? Are you able to read it out loud, or should I read it out loud?
Yeah, I can read it. The biggest circle structure seems to be spend money, prices become income, wages, which are spent again. Without companies and shops, this can be represented in a network. I mean, as long as we have economic transaction, theoretically we can have an economic network. It can be studied as economic network. So any type of transaction is represented as an edge in the network, as a link in the network. So basically, yes, and there are no the problem is to have access to this data. So in the case of circles, we know that there are farmers, there are shops involved. As long as I know, maybe Julio can say something more about this, but in general, like of course we can study and represent as a network. So the limitation is only from the data point of view. So in the case of circles, we are really lucky because we can observe these transactions going on, and there is no technical limitation from this perspective.
Okay, thank you very much, Hans Florian. If you want to ask another question, this answer, please feel free to write it in the YouTube chat. And in the meantime, we've got another question from Dante. Has there been any discussion around making disparities or keynotes visible in the network? For example, a producer who has been selling a lot could identify themselves as wanting to buy more, etc., etc.
This is something that we've been discussing, of how to show these imbalances within the network. But I think it's something for the future, definitely, because at the moment we're just trying to stabilize the network to make sure that payments can flow well, and that it's a stable system in general, so that people can actually buy stuff from the farmer. But definitely, like, it would be interesting to think about ways in which people could actually see these imbalances and then say, hey, I need this. And then within the trust network, you can find what you need, right? So we're working on the marketplace at the moment, so we can actually look for goods and services within the network more easily. But this is definitely sort of in our minds, like how to visualize this type of imbalances or this type of surpluses as well, how to turn them into liquidity for others.
Yes, thank you very much. I can't see another question right now from the audience. Please feel free to use the time to ask questions to us. Maybe I just want to ask a question that, we know that comes up when we discuss this. It's about privacy, and because like we want to actually know more about the nodes and the transactions, but on the other hand, like we want to offer like this privacy to the customers of Circles. I'm not related to Circles, but I know that Circles wants to do it. And Julio, you've been in a very active debate with the developers of Circles. So maybe you would like to inform us briefly about what you discuss with them regarding the private keys, etc.
Definitely. So we are really pro privacy. We don't send like crazy amounts of emails to people or anything like that. Actually, we don't even check if your email is real when you put it on the website. We don't have any way of doing that, and so definitely we're pro privacy, and also I like to say this and really make this strong is that we're pro cash as well. But for us, the question is, how do you build digital forms of cash that have the same qualities of cash? They're anonymous, right? And that your payments can be you can just send your payments to whoever, and then the money can just circulate around. And that's I think a question that nobody has been able to crack yet. I know David Chom's work, for example, back in the day in California, I think in Canada as well, with what was it called, eCash or something, or I forgot, e-money, I forgot. But I mean, now we're thinking about different options of how to do this. There is some work that's being done with, for example, the NIB networks, or like thinking about mixed nodes or mixed networks as ways of making the data both like untraceable, so you don't know who is who within the network, but also there are still like trusted peers or validators, so to say, so you can kind of still trust the people who are maintaining the network somehow. But it's an interesting question. I mean, in general, for us, we try to know as least as possible from people, but at the same time, from the purposes of research, it's also interesting to try to figure out what's going on more. So like one thing that we were discussing sometimes is like, okay, how do we bring about the data of the resources that are actually flowing within the network, and do we want to put that on the blockchain or not? So like if we have producers, service providers, and so on giving out products, and they put that information onto the application, would that go onto the blockchain? And then could we have aggregated information about this to know, like, okay, there are like these specific networks or supply chains emerging here and there, and how can we use that in a way where it's privacy preserving, but still useful for the purposes of allowing people in the local economies to say, hey, we need more of this, we need more of that, where can we get more of that? And trying to find these sort of complementarities across the supply chains. But that, it's both a very technical issue, but it's also a social issue. It's thanks for this question. It's really good. How do you create a digital form of cash?
Yes, thank you very much for answering this, Julio, and I hope the audio quality is better now where Julio is really taking care to speak into the microphone. Thanks for the 3 questions that were asked and that are actually directed towards the Circles system. Dante asks 2 questions about the effectiveness of the rate of inflation, how to measure it, and I find it really interesting because I think Circles has like this 7% increase per year, but as we all know, inflation also depends on the customers and the transactions and prices and so on. The other question is, does a very high rate of income increase deprioritize those nodes that cause blockages in the cycles? And I just want to add the last question of Marie Schulz. Thanks for asking it. She's asking about shop systems in Circles and if it will be a Telegram channel and so on. So maybe just be very brief about the specific Circles information. Yeah, because this is mainly about the network analysis of it, but obviously CirclesUBI is such an interesting project that there's tremendous interest. Super happy about that.
Maybe Teodoro, you want to take the one about the blockages?
Yeah. So how to measure the effectiveness of the rate of inflation now that Circles is live? This is a very interesting question. It's actually related to the whole performance of the system. So what we are trying to do with this analysis is actually to see how the performance of the system is going on. So what we are planning to do is to measure. So we did the analysis of the first 6 months. Now we will do again the analysis in September, October, and see what's going on. And we measure. What I'm doing, I'm trying to to take out the best according to what we know. So what we will do is to compare what's going on in the first 6 months, in the second half of the year, and so on and so far. So ideally, the only thing we can do from a quantitative perspective, at least, is just to compare time to time what is happening in the system, and see if eventually we can also try to variate this rate of inflation and see if there are some changes. So it's really hard to answer at this point. Does a very high rate of income increase deprioritize those nodes that cause blockages in the cycles? I don't know what do you mean with deprioritize, but I think I think also in this case there is no very straightforward answer. I guess the only thing we can do is to observe over time how the structure of the economic network is changing, and how the performance of the nodes is changing. So I don't have I think a straightforward answer for this. Maybe Julio, you want to add something?
Just very quickly to say that inflation is always a process of redistribution. Today it happens from mostly the 99% to 1%, to put it very generally. The circle system is made in a way whereby if you join later within the system, there is a process of redistribution, so that there is as people issue money, there is a convergence towards the mean, so to say, in terms of monetary creation. But of course, in practice, when you have goods and services being sold and given, there are structures of power that emerge. So a wholesaler who has the power to put prices, of course, can define how inflation will play out. But because we're trying to build a local democratic economy, it's also a matter of, okay, how do you create enough flows of resources so that local businesses, local governments, local farms, whatever, can actually set prices in a way that it makes sense for people. So that's an interesting question. I mean, inflation is a question of practice. I'm really curious to see how that will play out also. And then, Marie, about your question, yes, we're working on a marketplace. It should be ready within the next few months. And it's Telegram is not ideal, I know, but we at the moment, no, we do not have data specifically, as I said, for urban and non-urban areas, because, as I said, there is we do not have a way of knowing where the people are. Like, we don't have any geographical data tracking or anything like this. And then Laura Bremswig, how many people are active part of circles? That's a good question. And how many circles do you have in average? So I have about 1,300 at the moment, but on average, I mean, everybody always gets 240 a month. So long as you check in your account every so and so often. there is a liveness switch that kicks in after 3 months of somebody not checking their account, whereby they don't issue money anymore, to make sure that the promises are kept alive, so to say. And how many people are active part of Circles? So as I said at the beginning, we have about 100,000 people that join, but that are active. That's a hard question to narrow down, because as the Theodore said, it changes over time and it depends on the specific node and the place. Yeah, in Berlin we have about, I would say, 300 to 500 people that use it here and there, but it fluctuates depending on what is there to claim. So, for example, yesterday we had a marketplace and we had a bunch of vegetables from 2 farms. Yeah, so it really depends on what is there to claim.
So super. Thank you very much for the answers, and especially thank you very much for the questions. We all know science works over questions, and yeah, this is how you create knowledge and actually create like rethinking about circles and what we do. There are no further questions from the audience, and we are 5 minutes over time. I think this is the perfect timing. We could discuss way more, and I think we should also provide some links to CirclesUBI in the YouTube chat, or on the other hand, you can easily find us over the FRIBIS NetFi website, or over Googling CirclesUBI. My friends, do you want to say some concluding remarks to our audience besides thank you very much?
I would say it's important to say that the intention behind Circles is to do basic income, to make it happen, rather than to keep asking for governments to give it to us. So it's just a way of also changing the politics of the day by claiming the power, but people claiming the power to issue money from the bottom up. So thank you very much.
Thank you, guys, and thank you for the questions as well.
Yes, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to do research about this crazily interesting topic. I really love it, and we love it as a group, and so happy to be here with you guys and to be on this adventure to make the world a different place with UBI and community currencies. So I wish you all a lovely day and a lovely week and weekend and summer.
Thank you.